Alright, today we're going to continue with putting on the bird netting. Now this is Merlot. Now you can see over here we have bird netting on, and if you look on the other side in the row right next to us over here, you'll see that there's no bird netting. And that has to, we have to put bird netting over there to protect the clusters. And the reason for that is that the birds come and they'll peck in order to get the fruit. They'll peck one of these, but they don't take the whole berry off, they just put a hole in it. And then what happens is it leaks onto the rest of the cluster, and then the cluster gets rotted. And we lose the whole cluster from one little peck, so you got to keep the birds off. So again, we did 5 rows, me and my wife Kathy, we did 5 rows day before yesterday. And today we'll probably try to do about 8. And that'll get us basically halfway through. We have 23 rows, 15 of which are Merlot. These clusters have been in the ripening stage, which is called veraison, for about a week and a half now. So here's one that's still happening here. You can see purples, and you can see some pinks maybe, and some green. Same thing here. See, you see different sort of colors. Eventually, they'll all get the dark purple color. This really shows you what veraison looks like. And to me, this is one of the more beautiful stages because of the different colors. And you can see the greens and the sort of pinks. Now, if we were to pull off one of these, we'll take one off just to show you, and then we'll pop out the seeds. What you're going to see is, let me get all the pulp off. See, the pulp is still green. Here you go. See that seed now? I'll put it in the middle of my hand. That seed is green. So that's telling me that we're still in a ripening stage. They're not ripe. I don't even have to taste it, I can tell. Once they start to ripen, these seeds will turn brown. So right now over here, you can see that they just turned purple, and it's probably a month away at a minimum before we can pick. So this is mid-August and maybe mid-September, probably not till October, so maybe a month and a half. Now we look at the leaves. In general, the leaves look in pretty good shape. These look nice and light green. These are new leaves. The darker greens look good. But what you want to look for is stuff like this. Now this could be a little black spot, or it could even be what's called European mites. What they do is they start around the edges, and before you know it, the whole thing comes like a bronze color. And that's bad because that impacts on the ripening. You can't ripen without good, healthy leaves. And we see them here and there. When you start to look at them, you see them around the edges. So it's very likely mites. Basically, at this time of the year, we're spraying with a little bit of copper. The copper is for what's called downy mildew, and sulfur for powdery mildew. There's also a disease of the clusters called botrytis. Most of the sprays we put on are organic. Here on Long Island, it's very damp. We try to only spray when we have to. I spray very rarely for bugs, critters that impact the vines, because we really don't get much of that. But we do get a lot of fungus, and so we try to use the organics for the fungus whenever possible. It's not always possible, but like I said, we use the sulfur and copper. We go light on the copper because it's a heavy metal, but it's organic, and those things wash off after a rain or two. Alright, now we're by Cabernet Franc. It's a different grape. This is a grape that you blend in with your Merlot, and this grape gives you a bouquet. It's sometimes called a middle palate grape. It fills the hole that Merlot has in the tasting range. Now, you can see that these are still green. They're a little slower than the Merlot, but they're starting to, again, they're in the veraison process or the ripening process. I walk through the vineyard every day, and we look to see how far we're getting with all the different varieties, and there are only 2 that we grow right now. Here's some that have ripened or in a different stage of ripening. You can see most of the purple, and the green is gone except for some of the little small guys here. Those we like to get rid of, but we won't try that. That's all would have to be done by hand. We can't pick until everything is purple. And if there are clusters that in, let's say, a week or so, where everything is purple, and there's a couple of green clusters, we'll cut those off because those won't ripen in time, and they'll have an adverse impact on the wine we make. We want to try to get everything, or as much as we can, ripened. That's why we don't pick this stuff. These are called secondary crop, and you can see they're way behind. They're small. In fact, this one's got a little bit of a black spot. That's that stuff. And so if I was to come through here and do some cutting before I put the net on, I would go ahead and yank that off and get rid of it. The oldest leaves, and you can see we have some problems here. Not, again, it's not a lot, but again, this might be European red mites. And you can't see them, they're so damn small. Maybe if I did that, they might fly around and I can't see them. Usually we spray what's called a summer oil, or a stylet oil is the brand, and that kills the mites. But we would just spray the canopy. I wouldn't spray the clusters. As I said before, we will be turning off the portion of the sprayer that sprays the clusters probably this week or next, and we won't spray the clusters for the next month and a half. Now in this group, accidentally, and I don't know how it happened, when we originally planted these, and they were tiny, they looked like dead twigs, so you couldn't tell them apart, they had no leaves, we planted a Chardonnay. So they're mixed in here with all the Cabernet Francas, one Chardonnay plant, and it won't, this plant will never turn purple. It'll get a little more golden than it is now. And if we, let me see, if we pop open a grape, let's open up a grape here and see what the pit looks like, because these are probably a little more advanced. Now you see, there's brown in that, and it's not bright green like the ones that we saw in the Merlot. And that tells us that this is in a more advanced stage of ripening. Now, we don't plant Chardonnay anymore, but we had it, and usually we would pick the Chardonnay in late October. And then we would pick the Merlot sometime in November. Now, I wanted to show something because it's interesting to look at it at this time of the year. We prune in the fall. We do what's called a rough pruning, if we can. And then in the spring, we do the fine pruning. So what is that? What you see here, last year was originally one of these. And what we'll do this year is I will cut here. And they'll give me two choices in the spring, this or this, to then pull down and tie. And there are buds on each one. These are called canes, by the way. So there are buds all along the canes, and the thinner ones have more buds. The real heavy ones, bull cane, like this, have a little less. What they call the internode, the distance between the two buds that you can use. See, there's 1, 2, and then there's one on the other side, which we tend not to use, is longer than the distance between, usually, not always, the distance between here and here. You can see how close this is as compared to this. So pencil thin is usually the best. So I'll cut over here, keep these two for next spring. I'll probably, now we got one here and one here. This is very heavy, so I might not use that. I might use these two, cut here, and then just take this, cut this a little bit and attach it to the longer one here. But you know, I can't teach pruning in 5 minutes, but that's basically what happens. This year, everything's 2 weeks ahead, so we may be picking the Merlot and the Cab Franc in October, mid to late October. We'll have to see. And we'll blend that with some California Chardonnay, California Cabernet Sauvignon, and that gives us what most people call the Bordeaux blend. And we buy California because out here, 3 out of 5 years, the Cabernet Sauvignon really doesn't ripen that well. So we buy to California, which is ripens a lot quicker, and by the time we get it, it's perfect and has a little higher sugar in it. And this year we probably wouldn't matter, but in other years where the sugar levels aren't high, I prefer to blend in a grape that has the higher sugar to get a balanced wine, rather than adding sugar from a bag. You don't want to do that if you can help not doing that. All right, that's the story with the Cab Franc.